Hello everyone, my name is Dogly, and in this video I'm going to go over the 3 main team roles that you need to have when building your team in Genshin Impact. If you follow this video, you'll be able to judge if your current Genshin teams are good, and you can use this information to make better team compositions in the future. While there's a ton of different characters with unique tricks in the game, I've really tried to condense many different team roles down to only 3 that you really need, so let's dive right into it. The first character role that you need to fill on your team would be a party damage booster. At its core, Genshin's endgame meta has been and probably always will be about dealing as much damage as you can as quickly as possible. So, dealing damage is the name of the game, and a character that can provide a buff for the damage of your entire party is absolutely crucial for this. The role of damage booster has the most variation and nuance of the 3 roles that I'm going to be going over in this video, so I will further break down this role into 3 subcategories that boost damage in different ways. And afterwards, I'll make an argument for which of these 3 subcategories is the most important to focus on. The first damage booster is a raw stat booster, or finding ways to boost the stats that most heavily influence your damage output. When you're looking for stat boosters, all of flat attack, attack percent, elemental damage bonus, elemental mastery, and crit can be viable things to get from your team's stat booster. Bennet's ultimate will provide a flat attack boost to his teammates based on his base attack. Kazuha's passive talent will give a big buff to your team's elemental damage bonus if he has high elemental mastery. Sucrose can give 20% of her elemental mastery to her teammates after she uses either her burst or her elemental skill. Any catalyst user can hold a Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers and give a 48% attack boost to the next incoming teammate. And any Anemo character holding the Viridescent artifact set can weaken the opponent's elemental resistance to any element that it swirls as well, which will then boost your team's damage with that element. The second kind of damage booster would be a character that summons an effect that deals additional damage based on the skill's own usage, like Albedo's elemental skill allowing for a proc of additional damage when hits are made within the field effect, or Xiangling and Xingqiu's ultimate skills summoning elemental weapons that will also deal additional damage. And the last form of damage boosting is using elemental reactions. Building a team around the potential to use at least one elemental reaction can be really crucial, as when 2 elements meet you can add a lot of damage to your attacks. Every character in the game can technically use elements and make elemental reactions, but sadly not every character is very good at actually making elemental reactions consistently. So when I talk about using elemental reactions to boost your team's damage, I'm talking about using certain characters that make elemental reactions happen a lot more quickly. These include elemental field effects like Chongyun's Cryo Infusion Field or Kazuha's Swirled Field, elemental tokens attached to enemies like Hu Tao and Child's Charged attacks, and elemental skills with very short cooldowns. Additionally, elemental bonus effects like Xiangling's and Xingqiu's bursts can also be a great way to have a stable source of elemental reactions. However, since geo-elemental reactions create shields instead of dealing additional damage, you normally wouldn't want to rely on geo-reactions for additional damage, unless you're also using a geo-resonance on your team. In terms of these 3 types of damage boosters, I really think focusing on consistently getting elemental reactions with your team is most often going to give your team the biggest additional damage bonus. The current meta in Abyss also seems to test our ability to shred or break shields, and having consistent ways to proc additional hits of elemental damage or to cause elemental reactions are the best way to break those shields. While some videos consider a shield shredder to be a completely different role than a damage booster, I really think that all of the things that make a character good at shield shredding also make them good at dealing additional damage to unshielded targets. So it's not a distinct binary between the two, in my opinion. Up next, I want to talk about the team role known as a battery. In short, a battery is a character that generates a lot of elemental particles or elemental orbs that will recharge your team's elemental burst gauge. And if you have more burst uptime on your team will usually be able to perform a lot more efficiently. Every time a character picks these orbs up after using an elemental skill, they gain energy to fill up their own ultimate gauge. But they also gain a slightly smaller amount of energy for their teammates at the same time. If their teammate is one of the same element as the energy just collected, that teammate will gain an additional 60% of the energy just collected. If the teammate is not of the same element, they will gain only 20% of the energy the user collects. So as you can see, teammates that share an element can help each other fill up their burst gauges a lot faster. Because of this, sometimes you'll hear that certain characters are a battery for a certain element, rather than being a battery for the full team. However, you don't necessarily need your battery to share the same element as a teammate if the battery is good enough at generating particles. I'll post a link to this webpage as well, but here on this chart you can see how many particles every character's elemental skill gives when used. The link also goes in more depth about elemental particles than what I can cover in the time of this video. On the left column you can see the particles given from each skill, and then the column with the skill's cooldown, followed by an efficiency rating of how many particles a character can generate per second. Currently, Beidou's hold skill and Kazuha's press skill are the fastest particle generators, averaging about half a particle per second each. However, this chart doesn't take into account certain character constellations, weapons, or talents that lower cooldowns or increase particle generation. For example, Bennet's particle generation could be much faster inside his ultimate's circle due to his lower cooldown, and Kazuha's Constellation 1 makes his cooldowns shorter too. Using the data from this chart, Kazuha, Bennet, Razor, Venti, Beidou, Rosaria, Jean, and Kaya are all good battery characters. However, almost any character that has a moderate or low cooldown on their elemental skill can be a proficient battery for a teammate of the same element. The previously mentioned characters might just be good at providing energy to the whole team as well, regardless of their elements. Alright, the last role that your team really should have is a healer or shielder. In other words, a teammate that can keep your team unharmed and in fighting condition. There are a number of tough enemies that can deal insane amounts of damage to your team in this game, and it's not always possible to dodge. So either quickly recovering or preventing damage with a shield can be important. The best healers and shielders in the game, though, are ones that can also provide support with one of the previous two roles mentioned. For example, Xiangling's shield not only prevents damage but also weakens the opponent, effectively boosting the team's damage. Diona can use shields with her elemental skill and heal with her burst, but her burst also creates a cryo field effect that can deal additional cryo damage and can serve as a base for elemental reactions. Bennet's burst heals but provides a really big attack buff as well, and lowers his own elemental skill's cooldown, allowing him to be a battery too. While I think the best of these shielders and healers have other tricks up their sleeves, the need to heal when going through multiple chambers in the Abyss is still really important in its own right, and not having a way to stop or reduce damage means that your team likely will run into trouble sooner or later. Alright, so in review, the three roles that you really should have on your teams are a damage booster, a battery, and a healer or shielder. If I had to name a fourth role to consider, it would be a crowd controller, or a character that can group enemies together so your team can more proficiently attack them. However, ultimately I left that role off this list due to only a few chambers in the Abyss where this is particularly helpful, and even then there's usually some workarounds that can be made in the current Abyss. Past Abyss cycles, crowd controller was pretty needed, but that hasn't been the case for a while now. I also decided to purposely leave the main DPS role off this list, primarily because I think quick swap teams like the Chinese national team have proven that you do not need to have a main DPS to have a great team. My personal recommendation for all of you in building a team is to actually have at least 2 damage boosters, 1 battery, and 1 healer or shielder. Since Genshin is a game about quick damage, having more than 1 damage booster can actually be really valuable. Furthermore, I'd probably recommend that the stats or effects that your damage boosters focus on are different from each other. For example, having 1 damage booster focusing on attack buffs and another that focuses on elemental buffs or elemental reactions can help round out your boosts and to give you an overall higher damage input for your team, since focusing too much on one stat can give diminishing returns. If you've made it this far into the video, comment down below what your favorite characters are that provide these 3 roles for your team. For me, my favorite damage booster and my favorite healer is Bennet, while my favorite battery is Kazuha. If you found the content helpful, please like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!
There are leaves around, and I know just the tune to accompany them, if you wish to hear it.